right, I'm going to start letting people in. I'm going to share my screen, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello,
everyone.
Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
Hi,
Hey, hi.
everyone.
Hey, hey,
Hi,
hey.
Jean.
Oh, so many lovely, friendly faces here. Oh, it's Philip. I haven't seen Philip in forever.
And my brother's here, Ron
I
from
know. I saw
South
it. I saw
Carolina.
another prince on there. And we got Julia and Dane and Joanne.
Hey,
Oh,
Shannon.
hi, hi, hi. And Linda. Love it, love it, love it.
People.
Well, it'll probably come as no surprise that this was a very popular topic.
We're going to the southern Spain in September to check it out.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Paula. Hi, Stephanie.
Hello,
Welcome to
Shan.
Ron. So we're just gonna have people trickling in here for a moment. As I said, it's a very timely topic. So if I could just ask folks to mute themselves, just so there isn't any cross noise, and then you can of course unmute or chat something in the chat if you have a question in the meantime. All right. Welcome to Mark, Nan. All right. And we're going to start with Gene Elliott, who many of you know. He is a financial planner here at Brio. He has helped a bunch of folks with their retirement, both domestically and abroad. But we're here to talk about if retiring abroad or even just traveling abroad is something that we can help you do. And with that, Jean, I will let you take it from here.
Thanks, Shannon. And thank you, everybody who took time out of your busy day to join us today. We really appreciate it. So the title is How to Retire Abroad. There are going to be things specific in this presentation to retirees, but it's also going to be beneficial to those of you who are still working and are considering possibly moving abroad and continuing to work. So Shannon, next slide, if you don't mind.
Do not. The next slide is not that exciting, folks. It is some disclosure information, blur, blur, blur. We are not tax professionals. This is information only. Consult us for your direct personal needs.
Okay, thank you. And so some of the challenges we're going to talk about today, right there on the screen, personal and social, taxes, banking, Social Security, healthcare. I'm going to talk about those things. Then I'm going to pass it over to Shannon, and she's going to talk about some of the places you could go and some of the qualifications that you have to meet in order to go there. So please forward to personal and social. So you got to have a plan. First, where will you live? And when you decide where you will live, you've also got to decide, well, what happens to all your stuff in the US, particularly if you own a home. And we're going to talk about investment accounts and retirement accounts in a little bit. But that's the first step, obviously. But I think for some people, that can be a pretty challenging first step, because not only determining where we want to go, but determining how we get there and how we stay there is probably the most challenging part in all of this. And there are ways, as Shannon's going to talk about, that you can relocate to other countries by investing in those countries, buying property in those countries. And, one of the things people really need to consider is, where am I going to live and how am I going to live? And I would say this to a client who's relocating to a new city in the US that they're not very familiar with. Try before you buy. do a trial run before you make it permanent, because we obviously, don't want to rush into a home purchase and then to have this not work out, which can happen for, several reasons that I will talk about. And area location is a really important thing within any city you're going to live. I went to Paris for the first time in 2005. In 2021, when travel opened up, France was one of the first places to open up. I hopped on it, bought a ticket, went back to Paris. And I wanted to go to the neighborhood that I stayed in while I was there in 2005. I remembered this beautiful, charming, lovely neighborhood, and I just couldn't wait to get back there to see it. And it was completely different and not for the better. So, my fond memories of that neighborhood were dashed by what it had become in 16 years. So that's something to consider too. You really have to know the neighborhood you're going to buy in. And of course, you can't control if a neighborhood is changing in 15 years. A lot of them do, but it's really important to hone in on that specific neighborhood or neighborhoods. You want to understand the crime in those neighborhoods, the resources that are in those neighborhoods, transportation, shopping, daily life. What is that going to look like? And that's something you're not going to figure out very quickly. That takes a lot of time to explore different neighborhoods and really hone in on where you want to be. Then when you hone in, and some of you might, I'm very familiar with Vienna. I've been 10 times. I could move to Vienna tomorrow and know exactly the neighborhoods I want to live in. So some of you, may be looking at places you're very familiar with where you might be in a position to buy sooner, but there are considerations that you want to, excuse me?
Sorry, I think that's someone just coming in.
Oh, okay. There's a lot of considerations in terms of how you're going to buy the home. Are you going to buy it all?
You want me to look at the, you want me,
Or are you going
okay, I'll go over there.
Or are you going to try to finance it? Every country has different financing options and restrictions, and a lot of countries don't offer a loan term equal to what we're accustomed to in the US with the 30-year mortgage. A lot of countries, term is based on life expectancy, so it can be shorter, or it often is shorter, I should say, than 30 years. There's also possible variable interest rates. We're seeing that with clients who have variable interest rates on
I'm not
mortgage.
sure if I'm liking the color.
Rates have gone
I'm
up.
loving this.
And so,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Ray, can you mute yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
oh,
I
maybe
think-
mute them.
Yeah, it won't let me.
Oh, okay. So, you want to consider what the interest rates are, the length of the term of the loan you can get. And then you also want to understand the exchange rate, because you're going to be buying in a foreign currency. So what does that translate to in US dollars, which is going to be your primary funding source? And then how do you get the money over there? Typically, wires are the least expensive way to exchange currency. And you're often required to open a bank account in the country you're buying in as well. And that's not always as straightforward and easy in the US. And I think Shannon's going to touch on this later. So a really great resource for people is just to rely on local expats. There's usually a local expat community. They usually have a Facebook page, and people are usually very helpful because they've been through it as well, and they're excited to be where they are. And so they're excited to help new people out. But you want to really tap into those communities. You also want to tap into local resources. If you're buying a home in France and you don't speak French, you're probably going to want to hire an attorney who speaks French and English, so that attorney can walk you through the contracts you're about to sign that are in France, so you understand what you're signing. Last thing on home purchase, many countries have additional fees. In the US, it's, basically insurance and property taxes. Many other countries have additional fees when buying a home, and a lot of them have a transfer tax. And that is something a buyer pays when they're purchasing a home. So you want to just do your research, do your due diligence, and have a complete understanding of what this home purchase is going to look like. You also have to have considerations for, do you speak the language? Might be necessary in some countries and unnecessary in other countries. I speak conversational German enough where I can, use German to order a meal or ask for something. And when I'm in Vienna, I say a sentence in German and they reply in English because they obviously know, I'm an English speaker. So somewhere there, it'd probably be pretty easy not to speak the local language, apart from signing contracts, of course. But in other countries, that could be a real detriment. Of course, then we have social, economical, and the political climate to consider. Those things can change at any time in any country, and perhaps some more than others, but it's important to consider that and understand that, and really, do we have a plan? Do we have a plan in place to leave if we need to? And, I don't think, the thought of having to leave the country on rather short notice should prevent somebody from purchasing a place in that country. But, you would have to consider what happens if I have to leave for not just, economical and political reasons, but what if you had to leave for other reasons, family reasons? Would your property there be easy to sell or rent out? So you want to understand those things as well. For example, in Berlin, they did away with Airbnb years ago because they had a housing shortage. So, if you own a place in Berlin and you want to leave, Airbnb isn't going to work for you. What's going to work for you? And again, safety considerations, I talked a little bit about that when I talked about, the specific neighborhoods that you're looking into. But you definitely want to, the State Department has a great website where you can look up any country and you can see, travel advisories, things to be on the lookout for in terms of crime in those countries and cities. And then, with language, there's also cultural differences. And that's really important. You want to understand those cultural differences because you may start meeting people. Hopefully you would start meeting locals and forming friendships. And you want to understand, if they invite me over to dinner, do I have to take off my shoes when I walk in? Is that expected? And just the wide range of cultural differences, can cause issues. So it's good to be aware of those. And then lastly, you want to revisit your estate plan, make sure that's all in order. You might want to ask your estate attorney if they think you should do anything in the country you're planning to move to once you get there, because if you're living in the United Kingdom and the US, and well, you're going to have assets in both countries. So you want to protect those assets in both countries, and you want to understand how assets pass to heirs in a country you're relocating to. And that would be by talking to the necessary professional. All right, Shannon, please move on to the next slide. I know this is a lot of information, but I really hope this is helpful to you all. Taxes, taxes, taxes. It's always a big consideration anywhere you are, but it definitely becomes more complicated when you live abroad. Any US citizen is required to file a US tax return. If you are living abroad and have residency status, you are most likely going to have to file a tax return in that country as well. And therefore, you need to have tax professionals that understand both US tax law and tax law in the country you're in. For example, I have a client who spends most of her year in France and therefore files French taxes. She does not speak French. So it's been a challenge for her to find a tax prep resource that speaks English as well, because all the forms are in French. So you really need to cover your bases here. A lot of countries have tax treaties with the US, and that helps you avoid double taxation. Some don't. It's really important to know that before you go. And again, talk to those professionals who can tell you what your future taxes are going to look like based on filing in two countries. For workers who are living abroad, the US has the foreign earned income exclusion, which that allows you to exclude 130,000 of your foreign earned income from US taxes. That's a 2025 number. That number tends to go up a little bit every year. And then the foreign tax credit provides a dollar for dollar credit against US taxes for foreign taxes paid. Again, in attempt to not have us, be taxed twice on income. Big thing is your Roth IRA distributions might be taxable in the country you choose to live in. Roth IRA is a great vehicle to build a bucket of tax-free money to withdraw from during retirement in the US, but you're taxed on your contributions as they go into the Roth IRA. And then, like I said, in the US, when you pull them out, it's tax-free. Well, if you move overseas, pulling the money out could very well be taxable. So now you've paid taxes going in and coming out. So a traditional IRA or a traditional 401k might be a better option in that case, because at least you don't pay taxes going in on the US side. In terms of your retirement accounts, if they're non-Roth retirement accounts, every dollar you take out is taxed as ordinary income in the US. Therefore, if you are going to move abroad, probably makes the most sense to leave your retirement accounts in the US, because transferring them would require you to liquidate them, pay taxes on them in the year you liquidated them, and then investing overseas. So you could have a pretty substantial tax bill in one year and then forego the future tax deferred growth on your retirements as well. So I'm going to wrap up taxes, Shannon. You can move on. But the crux of this is that it is so important that you seek professional help of somebody who understands taxes both in the US and the country that you are intending to move to. Banking, pretty simple. You can easily opt into e-delivery on your US bank accounts so you don't get mail. Some institutions require that you have a US mailing address. And so, if you're going to use a friend's address as your mailing address, you probably want to opt into e-delivery so your friend doesn't get a ton of mail that they're having to shred because it has sensitive information on it. You can, maintain bank accounts, like I talked about retirement accounts when I talked about taxes in the US, but you can maintain bank accounts as well, which is not a bad idea, considering, if much of your life is in the US, you're probably going to be coming back to the US. So it'd probably be helpful to have a local bank account that you can access. Social Security, most countries, you can have your Social Security deposited into bank accounts there, but some countries we cannot do that. One thing to consider is that if you have foreign accounts and bank investment accounts, whatever, and the aggregate of those accounts at any point during the calendar year has hit 10,000 or more, you do have to report that to the US. And then lastly, you got to be mindful of the service transaction currency conversion fees, because those can definitely eat into your bank account. So it's always good to check with your local bank, your credit cards, to search out those institutions that provide less costly and better benefits for using their services abroad.
All right, and I'll just add that much like in the US, in order to establish an account in a foreign country, you need certain, depending on the country, you need certain to meet certain minimums. You might need to have a lease in hand, a renter's agreement, some, lots of sort of basic proof stuff. You can't just walk in and necessarily say, here's my $500.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. All right, next up.
Next up, we have Social Security. So as I said, most of the time payments can be sent to foreign banks. There's a few countries on the screen that you cannot do that. The 5 stands are, former Soviet republics, and their names all end in stands. So they're called, nicknamed the 5 stands. So, you've got about 10 countries there that wouldn't allow that. You gotta know how Social Security is taxed in your host country. I believe California, for example, doesn't tax it. The Fed taxes part of that. But you got to understand that because, again, you don't want any surprises. You want to understand what your potential tax bill is going to be. If you're still working and you work overseas for a US employer, you're most likely going to still pay into the Social Security system. But if you work for a foreign employer, you might not. And that definitely would impact your US Social Security benefits in the future. You may have to participate in that country's Social Security equivalent, but that should provide you for benefits as well. But you do want to understand how your future retirement benefits would be impacted by working for a foreign employer. And, that's obviously something we could do with financial planning. That information, I don't think, would be very difficult to find out. If you're self-employed and working overseas, and this stuff is all important because Shannon's going to talk about, the working as a nomad in a little bit here. But if you're self-employed and you're working overseas, you're still going to be required to pay self-employment taxes to the US, and that does include Social Security and Medicare. So when you're thinking about living or retiring abroad, you definitely, again, all rolls back to consulting a tax professional, and Social Security itself can be a good resource in terms of helping and guiding you through utilizing Social Security abroad. And now we're going to talk about healthcare and Medicare. So this is really one of the biggest things that you really have to do your due diligence on when you're living overseas. We always want to make sure we have health insurance, and we always want to make sure our health insurance provides us with the protection we need. So you really need a plan that covers a broad spectrum of services, such as emergency care, hospital stay, specialized treatment. Some people go on the cheap and still have Medicare in the US, and say if I have to have a major procedure, I'll come back to the US, get it done, and use Medicare. We also have to think about, if you have to have an emergency procedure based on an emergency, you're probably not going to be able to hop a flight back to the US. So it is really vital that you understand your plan, you have the coverage you need, and you understand what those coverage limits are, much like plans in the US. So there's also where does the policy cover you? You can get local plans which cover you locally, but don't cover you outside of that country. Well, if you're living in Europe, I mean, you've got dozens of countries within, a few hours flight reach of you. You're probably going to travel a lot more. Then you might want an international or global plan that can cover you wherever you are. Another consideration is the emergency medical evacuation. If, depending on where you are in the world, if something happens and you need to be evacuated due to a medical emergency, does your policy cover that? You also have to factor in pre-existing conditions. How is that going to impact your ability to qualify and or your cost? You also need to understand the claim and reimbursement process. It is different everywhere. And then you need to consider, do I keep Medicare or do I not keep Medicare? Part A is free, so there's no need to cancel that. You'd want to keep Part A. Part B, you have to pay for. I know some of you on here are already on Medicare, Social Security, and you see that Part B premium coming out of your Social Security every month. Well, if you plan to visit the US frequently or you plan to move back, you might want to keep Part B. If you cancel it and therefore don't pay premiums and you return, you could risk having to go on the Affordable Care Act, which is probably going to be much more expensive than Medicare, because Medicare's open enrollment is January through March. So if you were on Part B or you never signed up for Part B and you come back, you are stuck waiting until that open enrollment period is. And therefore, your only option is to go on the Affordable Care Act and pay that extra cost until you can roll in Medicare. And then you also have to deal with penalties. And that's the same with Part D. Part D is prescription, and Part D requires you to be in your local service area to be enrolled. So if you're living abroad or you're on Part B and you move, you gotta cancel Part B and or not register for Part B. But then again, if you come back, there are penalties, and these penalties last for life. Part B has a 10% increase to your monthly premium for each 12-month period you have delayed enrollment. And Part D is 1% on the average monthly premium for each month you delay enrollment. And, canceling these, not paying them is the same as delaying them. So you would have to pay more for Part B and Part D when you return to the US. So it's very important to consider, is it worth it to keep that cost? I would probably definitely say so, at least initially, until you know for certain that you're going to stay there long term. But even if you're going to stay there long term, there are reasons to consider keeping Medicare.
And if
So-
I, sorry. I was just going to add, if you're scouting a particular location, do visit their local pharmacies. Many of the prescriptions that are medications that are prescription here are over the counter elsewhere. So you can get a good idea of what the cost of those medications will be. They're happy just to tell you, yes, we carry that, and this is how much it is.
Great, thank you. And now Shannon's going to talk about where you can all go.
All right. You can't go anywhere, but there are a lot of options. And I personally have been looking into this myself. I lived abroad right after college on a work visa, and I have scouted 2 different retirement locations for myself, which I'll touch on when appropriate. But first of all, the climate, why we're all here today is because the political climate is a little funky, right? So that means that the view of Americans and American passports might be a little funky too. Another important thing just to notice that these things are very fluid. They change. Travel advisories, visa requirements change all the time. So your best resource is the country of interest, their embassy and their Department of Immigration. Okay. Like for example, we now need travel visas to travel to the UK. That's a totally new development. So check on any travel advisories for your countries of interest. Each country has a different process and timeline. So it behooves you to do your homework ahead of time if you're doing a scouting mission, so that you can, while you're there, visit with other expats and talk about how did this work with you. I mean, in the communities I'm a part of, so much of the talk is about how do I get my pets there? How do I get my household goods there? What is it that I need to bring that I can't get elsewhere, right? So there's a lot of just different nuances in the community that you're looking to retire to. So join and follow expat communities on social media. They're a really rich resource, and folks there are just so happy to help and share their stories. If you have any ancestral ties that give you a citizenship path, Ireland, Canada being two of the most likely ones, look into that. There are also some options for if you're a specialized skilled worker in a needed field. Fewer opportunities among that, but Australia has one. Lots of countries have immigration paths if you're investing in some way. That can be a purchase of real estate. That could be that you're going to start a business and employ local employees. So those, again, country by country. So Portugal is a good example of that. Their golden visa is no longer what it was a few years ago. So most countries now, if for a financial commitment, it's a much larger financial commitment for that. And some, the two that I've been looking into particularly are Panama and Belize. And both of which you can retire earlier than the set retirement age in the US. But in Panama, for example, it has to be Social Security. It has to be a pension or Social Security. It can't be investment income. It can't be just money you have. It needs to be Social Security or pension income. Any specific questions on that before I move on to some of the other options? Okay. All right, so a great way to explore, if you're still working, a great way to explore a country, these doors opened many countries when COVID hit, right? So tourism was hurting. They were figuring out how can we have people come visit and support our economies? So there are a lot of places where you can get visas of varying lengths. The shortest is usually 30. Some go up to 120. Some are six months or more, up to a year even. So, but you do have to prove that you can live there, right? So these are on the list of the sample countries below. Everyone here will get this deck. So the clickable links here will show you a list of currently available digital nomad visas. But looks like minimum you need to show $2,300 a month that you have. This might just be proof of a bank statement. Sometimes they'll make you deposit these funds in a local bank account. So again, it's country by country. But Nomad List is just a community that really supports all sorts of questions on the cost of living, if it's safe, what the lifestyle is like, how you're going to be welcomed into the community. Any questions on that? Okay.
Shannon, real quick, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Is that just
Hi, Mark.
just a clarification, but it said income per month, and is that like new income? You have to prove where it's coming from, or is it just you have to show you can support that much?
It depends on the country. So for example, Belize, one of the programs I'm looking into, you can show just a bank statement that's the equivalent of $24,000 a year, right? If you say like, oh, here, I have $24,000 right here, right now, then that's all you need to do for the financial burden of proof. But then in Belize in particular, you have to extend your tourist visa every 30 days. And that's $100 additional fee. And plus it's, a process, right? It's a time process. Yes, Philip.
Thanks.
Oh, hi, Shannon.
Hi.
Quick question. Hi. When you were talking about visas, if you're married and one person has citizenship in a particular country and the other doesn't, are you going to talk a little bit about those kinds of situations?
I don't think I'm qualified enough to talk about that, Philip. That seems to open up some great doors for you. Which country are we talking about?
Well, I have citizenship in Germany, but Kent doesn't have citizenship, for example.
Okay, yeah, that's a great question, worth digging into. I would think that there would be a pathway for that. And again, a lot of these, I'm single, so I'm just looking for myself, but a lot of these paths have paths for, children, loved ones, family. The big difference is whether you're looking to achieve residency versus citizenship. Those are two very different paths. They have very different timelines. Also, the rewards at the end, might that be socialized healthcare that you're getting access to? It varies so much. But we can dig into that further, Philip, one-on-one. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, maybe even contacting an embassy for a particular country would be maybe a starting place. What do you think?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm sure we can get some info before we call the embassy for sure.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Uh, any other questions? I can't see the chat right now. If anyone chatted something, if you could just.
I'm
Jean-
monitoring the chat, Shannon.
Oh, okay, sweet. All right. So then buying real estate. So if you have the wherewithal financially and the interest in establishing a life abroad, buying real estate is a great way to do it, with all of the caveats that Jean said before. Rent for a year before buying. Don't buy a plot of land and think you're going to be able to build your dream house on there in a year. It's not going to happen. Basically, both of the countries that I'm interested in are in Central America. So, the climate there in terms of just our Western expectations is very different. So one of the things I learned in Panama, they said, what's tomorrow mean? And I'm like, I don't know, tomorrow. They're like, it means definitely not tomorrow. Right. So if somebody says they're coming by tomorrow, you aren't going to see them tomorrow. They're not going to tell you they're not coming tomorrow. They might come by next week. So be very, if you're going to make another country your home, be mindful of the climate, the pace. You're an interloper, right? So you want to learn the rules of how they approach things. Also, be very aware of foreign ownership restrictions, very common in Thailand, beachfront areas. Also, some of these, even if you do buy in certain countries, you need to employ one or two locals, be that in a house or gardening situation, right? Some sort of home care, because they're looking to also bolster their community so that you're not just taking, that you're also giving. So again, so country specific, these two resource, International Living and Escape Artist Real Estate, have actual listings. And then there are different country specific. There's not like a universal Zillow, unfortunately, for you to browse available things for sale. Obviously, you'd want to vet and employ a good real estate agent. Again, the country laws and ways that we process things here are not the same abroad. Any questions about buying real estate?
I have a quick question. Two
Yeah,
things. Are there restrictions on women buying in certain countries? And then are there restrictions on whether you come out as gay or lesbian or whatever? Is any of that apply?
Great. Well, certainly certain countries are much less hospitable, let's say, to the LGBTQ plus community. As far as women ownership, I have not come across something about that, but it would not necessarily surprise me, Nan. But I can look into that further. Is there any particular region of interest?
No, it was more of a curiosity because
Yeah.
I know we are oppressed people.
Yes.
So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and that's important to understand too, for me as part of the LGBTQ plus community, there are certain countries I would definitely not visit, much less relocate to. So, and yes, as women, it's important for anybody to understand what their rights are in any country they're going to and what the climate is like, certainly.
Thank you. All right. So then there are investment focused retirements. This is if you have a big chunk of money and you sort of want to buy your way in. Tons of different opportunities. Henley and Partners is sort of a residency by investment firm that has some programs you can look into, as well as Nomad Capitalist. So a few of the options here. In Panama, for example, there is this Friendly Nations visa where you can make a $200,000 real estate investment, or a lot of countries have that you deposit in a bank or CD in their country. So in Panama, it was a $300,000 CD that you have hosted there for 3 years, and then you get it back at 4. So you'd be getting the interest and earning that while you're there. So if you have a big chunk of money, you don't necessarily want to buy real estate, or not yet. This is a quicker pathway generally, just because you're proving your intent, interest, and commitment. So again, country by country options there, but we're looking at a minimum of 200,000. I will say that Panama currently is the lowest monthly income threshold for entering into any sort of retirement program at $1,000 a month. You need to prove, again, that needs to be Social Security specific income of $1,000 a month. It hasn't changed in many, many years. Their program was established in 1969, so it's long standing and part of law. So it's not like going to flip a switch, like just like tariffs or visas, for example. But again, once you define your country or countries, let's dig in and see what your options are. Okay, if you want to start a business, again, they're looking for influx of employment and income into their countries. So if you want to retire but do your second act job and employ some local folks, this is a great way to do it. Or if you want to start a part-time business, or own a resort and rent it out, or there's so many different options that you can do. Obviously, country by country specific, and there are different pathways and timelines. But these are a few of the countries that you can do that from, with Georgia being one of the most popular and easy ones because it's very friendly for remote workers as well as entrepreneurs who want to have businesses. Again, there will generally be a requirement to employ X number of residents of that country if you're going to establish a business. It's also very important to note that why are you going where you're going? If you are just scouting it out and you're still working, a digital nomad visa is the right way to do it, right? If you are looking into a retirement visa and you're not really retired, that's not the spirit of the program, right? We don't want to be the ones that gum up the system because they're going to ask, it's not like you just go there and say they give you a card. You have to go and prove all these sorts of things often and at any and all renewal times. So if it is supposed to be a visa where you are not earning income from abroad, honor that. All right, so here are a few of popular countries with established retirement visas. So again, those are going to be retirement visas that there are particular age ranges, income, wages, and specifics as to how you have proof of income, whether that's pension only, whether that's just proof of funds, whether that's depositing in a bank account locally. So these are kind of the most popular ones because they're well established. Got Portugal, that gives you access to healthcare, residency for passive income, and a path to EU citizenship. All right, it's very, very popular. They have shifted. There is, when I was exploring Panama, and I'll get to this in a second, but I met some people that were also exploring Panama from Portugal that felt like they were not being welcomed by the community. They were sort of seen as gentrifiers, and that didn't really make them feel good. So they were looking at other options. Costa Rica, I have a friend who, after the election, her husband, and their kids are doing this right now, packing up and going to Costa Rica. Very welcoming if you meet their qualifications. Great healthcare and tax perks as well. Mexico is good. It has a higher proof of income than you might expect. I think it's like $32.50 a month. The last time I checked. So, hi. Oh, okay. Spain also very good with healthcare access. You need to prove income. Thailand and Malaysia used to be on this list, not so much anymore. It's really raised the requirements. Thailand, these two visas are good options. Panama, the Pensionato visa, the one I spoke about, that has it offers you residency, discounts for retirees, and no tax on foreign income. The discounts, for example, apply to people that are just of a certain age in Panama. Currently, those ages are 55 for women and 57 for men. So you get all sorts of discounts, like 30% off of domestic travel, medications at 10%, utilities at 10% discount. It's something you need to ask for, because they're not just going to, give it out. If you're just having lunch somewhere, you have to say, oh, I need the Pensionato discount, and they'll give it to you. So that has a lot of great baked in rewards to it. And then Italy also has a great one. And Philip has raised his hand. Or no, Ron, a different prince.
Hi, sometimes I get mixed up with my older brother. Non-residents aside, if I relocate, it would be as an EU citizenship. So I would be going to an EU country with citizenship there. And the question is, are there still residency establishment procedures beyond the ones that are needed for non-citizens? Or is it just the same as like I was moving somewhere else in the US?
Which country are we talking about?
Well, I'll use as example Spain.
Spain.
Yeah, I mean, you're a citizen. I have a client right now who is a citizen of Germany, and his husband is Italian, I believe. So he is an EU citizen, and they are planning on relocating to Germany. And I don't believe, as long as you have citizenship, you're a citizen. I don't believe you have to go through requirements that non-citizens would have to go through. You're still a citizen of that country and therefore a citizen of the EU.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe so, Ron.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, if you're kind of lost as to how to start this process, take a tour. Many countries offer them. These are just a few examples. Again, these are just suggestions. Portugal, Costa Rica, Mexico. The Panama relocation tour is one I actually took. So this was a 1-week tour throughout Panama that took you like from coast to coast with other fellow expats. And we looked at rentals. We talked to an immigration attorney. What all did we do? I mean, it was just like, basically it was a 1-week course on a bus. Like, we were studying on the bus when we weren't looking at stuff, different communities, different rentals to see, from Panama City, which is a very Western, modern, not to my liking environment with luxury apartments, to, a country with neighbors with horses, to a beachfront sort of, there are all sorts of things available to you in Panama. For me personally, the people weren't my jam, right? It just wasn't the sort of welcoming experience that plus I don't speak Spanish, right? So that limited my enjoyment of it. But it's a great I would give them a great mark for how thoroughly you, like, when I left at the end of that week, I'm like, oh, I know I don't want to retire here. Whereas one woman that I was on the tour with, she stayed. She didn't even go back. And I'm still in touch with her. So, they set you up for success in these sorts of things. Spain has some as well. And there are many, many more. And here are some resources just in general. So I'll say about Belize, which is another one that I've gone to twice. So they have tourist, they have a lot of different visas. The one I was looking into is called Qualified Retirement Person Visa. With this, you need to be just, I think 45 years old. So there's not a huge age restriction there. And you need to show proof of $24,000 a year of income, right? This is presuming you're not earning income, right? You are retired. It offers you can bring up to, I think, 10K of household goods without any customs or duties on it. That's sort of the main thing on that. Now, if for me, who's not yet retired, another option there is kind of a digital nomad visa. It has a different name, but you have to show proof of income from your employer. And that threshold, when I last checked, was $75,000. All right. So again, there are a lot of different ways to approach this depending on where you are in your journey. If you're looking to scout it out, if you're just looking for a lot, like last year, I spent a month in Belize to test it out, to see, like,
No, stop.
to see if I could handle the weather, to see if I could handle any and all of that. So, and in Belize, English is the primary language. Okay, so as far as rental agreements, anything like that, that's going to be in English, and that makes it a much more I can navigate that with a lot less stress, for example. So with that, we're going to stop sharing. You'll all get the deck, but we're going to open it up to questions. No questions? All right. Well, does anyone want to say what countries we're interested in? We just don't want to talk at all. Okay. All right.
I'll talk. No problem. I'll
Yeah.
talk.
Okay,
Now
let's
we
hear.
went to northern Spain to look around 2 years ago. Last year, Portugal and southern Spain, coming up in September to see different parts of Spain. Love northern Spain more than Portugal, oddly, but surprisingly so. But we'll see. Real estate in Portugal is not cheap, let me tell you. We looked around, and at this point, there are Americans everywhere, and it's not nearly as inexpensive as it was, say, 10 years ago. Portugal is definitely on the map if you haven't been.
Yeah.
There's English everywhere, and American tourists are everywhere.
And there also, if you're a really adventurous spirit, there are some communities in Italy, Spain, and Greece in particular that will pay you to live there just because their population is dwindling or aging out, particularly if you are a young couple with a family or hoping to start a family. Some communities really are looking for that.
I live there.
Okay, Philip.
Based on your research or your knowledge, how LGBTQ plus friendly is Portugal?
Oh,
Maybe
mean,
Jean knows.
We haven't seen, when we visited, we hadn't felt any animosity whatsoever. We, held hands in the streets and, in Lisbon and Porto, and didn't feel uncomfortable. But we also didn't live there, right? We were tourists, so
Also,
we were,
You're a woman. You're a woman.
yes.
yeah.
Very
And it's
different.
different in Europe.
Very
Women hold hands in Europe.
Very different from
Without being in
women.
trouble, yes.
Yeah.
We have
It feels
genderqueer
very
friends
progressive.
there.
What was this?
We have genderqueer friends in Portugal who are very comfortable there.
Oh, that's great to hear. Love
Yeah,
that.
living there.
Okay, thank you.
And there are
Love that.
there are Facebook groups specifically for LGBTQ as well for Portugal. They tend to be very accepting.
Thank you for that. Thanks.
Can't underestimate. I mean, I'm not a Facebook person by design, but the communities on there for researching and expats and support are lovely and robust. All right. Any other questions? Or any other countries we're thinking of? Okay, no one's joining me in Belize. Philip, are you and Kent gonna come join me in Belize?
Well, Kent has very different ideas than I do. My thinking is, because I'm German, I have a German passport, I have German citizenship, I speak German. And I love Berlin. I would like to be 6 months in Berlin, leave for the winter and go to Portugal for 6 months. That's my thought. Kent, do you want to talk?
No comment.
No comment. No comment.
Ooh, that doesn't bode well, Philip.
No, not at the moment. Thank you.
Well, maybe Philip spent 6 months in Berlin.
I'll say something
We'll come to the, yeah.
here.
Okay.
Is that this is, I mean, I don't know the age of people on the thing, but Philip is not really an urban person anymore. In the sense that, it's even tough for Philip to visit New York City. I mean, to walk 2 blocks, to walk to the subway, to wait for the bus, that's very
Because I have
yeah,
background.
because he has some mobility issues.
Yeah.
So he kind of has it in his mind that he's just going to whisk around Berlin, but this, he's a real Southern California now with the car.
I'm going to get a motorcycle.
And
I'll
that's
get a motorcycle.
That's another consideration to think about. I mean,
Absolutely.
when you're young, or
Don't move to Porto.
urban
Porto is
environment-
all uphill, vertical. Do
Yeah,
not go to
there-
Porto.
yeah, right. And Philip in San Francisco rarely would take the steps up, the Francisco steps to North Beach, So I want Philip to really understand what it's like
Yeah.
to live in an urban environment where everything can be very convenient, but you're kind of on the go.
I'd also say, Kent, that it's not just an urban environment. I found I'm a klutz, as many of you may know, but I found in both in Panama, Mexico, Belize, sidewalks just aren't a thing in the same way in the kind of regions that I would want to retire to. I don't want an urban experience. So I was particularly struck by the lack, particularly in Panama, the lack of safe walking spaces or
Yeah, that's a
walking
really
spaces.
good point. And also in some places, sidewalks can be a little treacherous.
Yeah.
Let's say for instance in Buenos Aires, but so that's why your idea about you have to try out a place, you have to
Yeah.
really live there and see what's it like to go to the grocery store, to get food,
Yep, exactly.
develop a daily routine.
Yeah, don't go on vacation for 3 weeks. Go as if you're living there for 3 weeks or longer if you can.
Right.
I can't underestimate the healthcare requirements, needs, and thoughtfulness that needs to go into that. One of the places in Belize that I was looking to, which I won't because of cost considerations, but it's an island, Caye Caulker, and their slogan is "Go slow." Right. So what I didn't know was their slogan was "Go slow" because the rest of that phrase is "We have 2 cemeteries and no hospital." And that's still true. They don't have a healthcare facility on the island yet, though a clinic is being built. So the spirit of the island very much appealed to me, but the reality of aging in place in a situation like that is not necessarily for a single person the best approach. So you really need to think about the whole picture, not just for today, but 5-10 years from now, or plan and bake your return back into the US accordingly.
Shannon, could I offer something also? I'm a long-term care specialist, and
Yes.
a lot of people have policies. So if at some point you could use me as a resource of if they have something, what can be used internationally and what does it look like? Because some policies cannot, and a lot of.
Oh, Stephanie, you muted.
I'm sorry, there's just different ways to use a policy if you have one. And whether you leave the United States or, come back, if you're abroad and something does happen and you decide to stay a while till you really get better, you could have your benefits paid out there. So,
Yeah, depends on the policy for sure, what they.
right, I could be a resource for that if you'd like.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you so much.
Thank you,
That's a
Stephanie.
good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
All right. Well, we're here if you have any questions that happen after the fact. Very excited for each of your ideation phases and stages, and just let us know how we can help.
Thank you both. It was
Okay.
wonderfully put together and very helpful.
Okay. Thank you, Philip. So good to see you. We'll
Thank
see you in Berlin.
everyone for joining.
Thanks a
Okay.
lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.